Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here. And so the point of this panel is we're going to be talking about what no one's telling you about scaling agents. So I'm sure you've all heard lots about agents this morning and this afternoon as well. I have a distinguished panel with me from Personal AI, DeepSEE, and BlinkOps, who are some of the startups that have been working in the agent world and ecosystem. And they're going to tell us a little bit about the things that they've been coming across and how they're seeing that enterprises are actually adopting agents and some of the challenges of doing so. So first of all, I want to start just frame it up a second and just show you what, and just show you the context in which we're discussing this. So if we can imagine at the bottom, you can see this layer. And this is all about the AI Foundry and what Azure is producing to enable enterprises and partners to build their agents. So this is all about the GPU structure. It's all about the 11,000 models and things that are available in AI Foundry, including the Anthropic models, as you all saw this morning, which we love to see that. And then if we go and look at the top layer, this is the interaction layer that we're going to start seeing in the future. So what we're building here is how are enterprises going to be looking at technology for the future? And then the key part is this middle layer, which is the agentic layer. So if you can imagine, enterprises going forward are going to be like building their own fantasy football teams with a set of agents. It's no longer the fact that you have to go and adopt these large sort of suites of solutions, which may not be best in class. The ability now to choose the right agent for the right job and chain them together so they're all working together is how we're going to start seeing the enterprise evolve in these technology choices. So with that said, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. And if you could all just give a little bit of an introduction about yourselves and your company. So maybe we start with Sharon on the end, please. Tell us about Personal AI.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon. I'm the CTO co-founder of Personal AI. What we do is we are an AI agent platform for enterprises. So we enable enterprises to be able to build their own, what we call AI personas. So that can be executive assistants for yourself, your emails, your meetings, or you can build something for your team if you're the supply chain team or the market analytics team. And of course, also across the board of the entire enterprise. So if you imagine a HR and compliance persona, you can have that released to everyone in your company. So that's what we do in a nutshell.
Thank you. Zion?
Hello, everyone. My name is Zhang Zatlavi. I'm one of the founders at BlinkOps. BlinkOps is an agentic security operations platform. What we allow organizations to do is to build your foundation of security agents, what we like to call micro agents, and build an orchestration platform that allows you to control, run, and manage all these custom-made agents to work together towards a certain goal.
Perfect. And Nick?
I'm Nick Baguley, so I'm the CTO of DeepSEE.ai. We actually started using Paul Graham's philosophy of do things that don't scale. Early on, we worked with JP Morgan to automate their processes around over-the-counter equity trades and derivatives. And as we went through, we eventually found a way to start scaling across front, middle, and back office operations for all of financial services. We now work across large organizations like Broadridge and DTCC. Many others we've expanded into Accenture and now into regional banks as well. And this has really created an opportunity for us to take core agents and be able to understand what is the subject matter expertise within some of these really, really elite teams within financial services, and how do we, like this fantasy football team, really drive down agents that can deliver directly. We've been able to scale that platform with Azure and what we've been able to do with Foundry, with all of the different things within Copilot, and super excited about the progress there, as it really helps us start shifting from really a SaaS company into a services software company where we deliver outcomes across finance.
Fantastic. So my first question is, we saw a number this morning that I think Charles Lamanna quoted. There's going to be 1.3 billion agents by 2028. Just to put that in context, that's 35% of the world's workforce is going to increase in the next 3 years. That's massive. So a lot of people are buying into this. They want to do it. They want to adopt agents. But why is it? What's slowing them down? What are the primary blockers that we're seeing from enterprises? So maybe Sharon, you could tell us a little bit what you've seen out in the field there.
Yeah, sure. I think, we can go at this at different angles, but one of the primary blockers that we have seen is no one really know what the agent's boundaries are or the constraints or limits are, right? So I think it's really cool that, Nick and Zhang has very specific agents, because I think of like using OpenAI or using any other kind of LLM as going from 0 to 80%, but a lot of these, especially in the enterprise setting, the expertise are the 80 to 100%, right? So really understanding what the agents can do and being able to go through the 80 to 100% includes good data, cleanliness of the data, understanding the actions that the agent needs to take, understanding if this actually is an end-to-end workflow without you having to build even more around it. So all of those, I think, are blockers to deploying to production level agent adoption. Maybe they can get a POC going, but it's not quite end-to-end for the end user themselves.
So you're talking about you need to go to production, you need to get that data clean before you're doing it, and sort of really thinking through that process.
Yeah,
Great.
And that can change a lot for the data infrastructure, because how the data is handled right now or how the data lives in your data lake today can look very different as to what the language model can process.
Okay. Zion, what's some of the things you've been seeing?
I think I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle about this. What we're seeing in the field is agents are rather new technology. And there is an issue of, I would say, two main blockers. The first one is organizations are not set up to adopt agents from a compliance perspective. We see that many times as a blocker for certain organizations. I can give an example. We work with one of the largest insurance companies in the world. They're our customers. And just going through the red tape of proving how the technology works and how, from a regulation perspective, we're not harming the organization, we're not putting it at risk, was a big challenge. And I think we're going to see more and more of that as the industry is shaping. But I think that's going to be somewhat of an easy thing. The second thing, honestly, that we see every day is trust. It's very difficult for an organization that is used to do things in a certain way, is used to certain technology capabilities, to kind of let go and say, oh, there is this new thing, agentic, I know how it operates, I'm not really sure though, and just let it run and touch your systems and actually take action and make decisions is a hard psychological leap of faith that you need to do. And we think that we're helping organizations to do that with our platform. But I find that that is a big gap that organizations are still facing.
So it's like the first time you get into a Waymo and watch it drive.
Exactly. That's a great
I'm going to let
example.
this agent go out and do something on its own.
Exactly. Think of the first time I sat in a Waymo, I was terrified. For the first 15 minutes, I was like,
I don't think you're on your own there, by the way.
Yeah. What am I doing? And it's really difficult when you're building an agent or even running it in a POC and you understand that the agent can take action and maybe isolate a machine or delete a user or really create an impactful, possibly negative impact. That is something that I feel organizations are getting more and more accustomed to.
Yeah, Nick, must be the same thing. Financial services, I don't want my bank account going to zero. So, you must be facing that as well.
Absolutely. Everything we do in finance has to be as close to deterministic as we can possibly get it. Things need to be a 1 or a 0.
Yeah.
Really cannot have ambiguity. We can't have hallucinations, right? Really for us, as we look at it, we see that being Copilot ready, being agent ready, really means that we need to understand that these are fundamental shifts, but the same fundamentals actually apply. If we go back and it's kind of surprising, but not focus on the best machine learning techniques or even the best agentic AI techniques today, but rather focus on the software development lifecycle, understanding how we actually build products and how we deliver value to end clients, understanding things like GRC and safety and compliance, and what actually needs to be delivered across success criteria, a definition of done, and finally, also thinking about agents as people. And we need to understand that the same fundamentals that apply to managing people also apply back to our agents and how we think about scaling platforms. We need to be able to understand that a lot of core challenges can happen around the individual, around what value they actually are trying to drive, how we set up responsibilities across RACI, across things like when something is supposed to be completed, and how do we make sure that the expectations are met and that each of the agents are actually doing what they're supposed to do with the right orchestration across them. And so,
yeah, I love it. I mean, the concept of relating it back to something we're all used to, of like treating agents like people probably allows us to get over those initial hurdles. Trust is one of them. I mean, how would you, an employee, would you let them run around and do something? You put guardrails in place. We need to think about that in the same way when we're adopting that. So, I mean, Nick, going back to you, what are some of the things that your company does to get over these hurdles? How are you facing those challenges? I mean, you've been there doing it for a while. What are you now doing which was different to how you were doing it initially?
Yeah, absolutely. So we go through a process where originally we worked very, very heavily with all of the subject matter experts across all of the teams out there. We needed to understand everything that they do in their day-to-day, and many times their process, their workflow that they have internally is not actually fully mapped out and may not follow the type of practice that they really wanted to. You know, one of the key challenges that we see, and I think exists across all industries, is access to the correct data. And when we get into finance, there are so many different data silos, and there are things where we've created separation of duties, we've created other ways to say, look, this data really just should not be accessed by these other departments. And the same thing applies back to the agents, where now we need to say, can they have access? How do we control that in role-based access controls, policy-based access controls, and ensure that the individuals can truly trust what they're doing? When we get to that stage, we can now start taking that subject matter expertise from the teams and applying that through plans, through blueprints, through specifications, and then internally we create prompt packs and even playbooks that now help us understand what tools can these agents access, what MCP servers, what integrations can they connect to. And again, all of those same principles of software development lifecycle now apply. We have to think about memory. We have to think about scaling our agents. And we have to be able to consider, how do we repeat this process and ensure that we're taking components and making sure that they're reusable across all of the systems that we work with. All of this starts enabling scale. But many times in finance, for us, we can't just be production first. We also have to be GRC first. And so this may mean that we work in an environment that we don't have full control or access to. It may mean that we need to have buy-in across many different teams beyond just the end users that actually work with our platform. By the time we're done, the most ideal situation is when we're able to put all of the core systems that that individual is going to work with, starting with email, going through their attachments, seeing the core that they work with and the systems of record so that they can see a lending origination system or a trade platform, all in one single pane of glass, and have access to the data they need to complete their job, and the agent also has that as well. We do stage this, so when we talk about this trust piece, the agents are not able to go in and just automatically do everything without that human review and approval. For us, human-in-the-loop process and that reinforcement learning process, continuous learning, that's not a bug, that's not an afterthought, that's a feature that is core to everything that we do and to the way that our user interface works. We need to make sure that that user experience allows the individual to be involved in managing the agents themselves so that they can continue to update, annotate, and very quickly be able to make changes to ensure that these agents are correct. On the flip side of that, though, the agents are so good at what they do and they run 24/7 that we're getting to the point where these companies are able to scale massively beyond what they could ever do before. Seeing well over tens of thousands of documents a day, taking processes that maybe before, from a review and compliance perspective, they only covered 1% to 5%. Now they're able to cover 100% of that same review. And we're seeing situations like one where we were able to save a trade reconciliation error that would have cost the company $45 million. We eliminated that risk up front.
That's great. So there's a flip side to the compliance side as well. You can actually help it, but you've got to get around it first, and well, not get around it, but comply with it first of all, let's say. Sorry. So, Zhang, what from your side?
So we're doing a lot in order to create that trust for customers with what we're doing, and we like to think about a multi-layered approach I kind of like what you said about treating agents like humans. And if you were to bring a new employee into the organization, you would have done your background checks, right? But also you would invest a lot of time in training.
I love that. The background checks is a good, yeah.
Background checks is critical, right? But when you're talking about it from an agent perspective, you will make sure that you give it the right permissions. You're giving it the right things that he can or cannot touch or act upon, right? So what we've done, first of all, we invest a lot of time with the customers in order to make sure that we understand the use case, we understand the guardrails, we understand what really they feel comfortable, what is their appetite to even give the agent the ability to do, being our agent or anybody else's agent, right? The second thing, which I think we're pretty unique on in terms of how we approach it, we don't give the agent the direct access to take action or to do certain things. So because we have a really strong and robust workflow engine on the back end of everything that we do, what we're doing is we give the agent the ability to run very deterministic, well thought out things or workflows that the agent can do. So the agent never touches a system directly, never carries out a task directly. So you're not waking up one morning and your organization is shut down, right? We work in security. There is a practically zero tolerance for mistakes or hallucinations or anything like that. We cannot afford it. So we built all these guardrails and we work really closely with the customer to make sure that whatever the agent is doing, it went through a proper QA approval and let's call it a human in the loop, so to speak, to make sure that whatever the agent can do, somebody approved it to do.
Yeah.
And that mechanism, going back to my first answer, that creates that level of trust, right? So you're not working on the first day with 100 different agents and you don't necessarily know what each agent is doing. You kind of gradually build your way into it. You test it out, you see every action. Maybe you want to monitor it with a human in the loop and approve it, and then gradually you build that level of trust, and all of a sudden you have dozens of agents working together.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Sharon, what about you?
I'm going to change my answer a little bit because I think everyone talked about the angle already. But I think what is also a blocker for us is how do we see adoption from like one single group within a enterprise going towards other groups, other sub-brands, going through other employees. And I think like the one key ROI, it will sound very fluffy, but essentially empowering the user themselves to do things, right?
Yeah.
So when we first started, we built very specific like bespoke agents for each of these enterprise ourselves. So all they have to do is go and use it, right? And now we have moved towards more of a platform motion. Essentially, each employee is empowered to make their own assistant, right? So now they suddenly feel like, oh, I don't have to go to Outlook. Not that I don't like Outlook, but so I don't have to go to Outlook and look through my 10 years of email for something, right?
Yeah.
So they're empowered to do something very fast, very quick. And even for the executives themselves, they don't have to go to the analyst to ask for, hey, can you give me specific data on store productivity over these couple of years? They can just directly ask the AI agent, right? So I think the empowerment angle is very important to create like adoption across the enterprise and really make sure that they can do the things they want. They can set the guardrails that they want. They can influence the response from the AI. So every time the AI is learning what they prefer, right? So I think that is something that we see a lot of success. Like once we give people the power of actually training and using the AI themselves, they see like people are very creative, right? They see a lot more use cases than what we can come up with.
Yeah. So, I mean, just building on that, if you go into an enterprise today, and they've probably been doing a bunch of prototypes or POCs we've seen the data that a lot of these fail and things like that. Are these enterprises really ready for these agents? Or are they just sort of, yeah, it works in the lab, and then they can't get it out the lab, and sort of, what's the reason behind that? It's something I'm hearing quite frequently.
That's a good question. I think there's many layers of reason. One is definitely, I'm a technologist, so I want to build shit, right? Like I don't want to say, hey, let me go and buy this and spend my money. However, I think the reality is the field is advancing so quickly right now. Someone somewhere is building the agent that you want better than you, right? Because for some of our customers, they're non-technical customers. They're like retails, right? So yes, they have IT teams, but their core competency is not building security AI. Their core competency is not building financial AI, right? However, they want to use it. And I think the simplification is, hey, we can just put a wrapper around OpenAI or Azure AI, and things will just happen magically. There's so much plumbing around all these, right? Whether that's compliance, security, understanding how the agent should act, should not act, cleaning the data, getting the data in a shape that's ready, that people don't really consider because there's so much marketing around, hey, you can just use the API and call the API and that, like, everything is good.
Magic happens.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's like maybe okay in 60% of the cases, but enterprise requires like almost nearly 100%.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can completely see that. I mean, on the security side, Zhang, I mean, you must see that, are people ready? Or can they adapt existing processes easily? Or are they going to have to build out new processes?
Actually, we see it the other way around. Our challenge with most customers is actually stopping them from going too wild with it.
Okay.
No joke. Like
So you're the policeman.
In many ways, yeah. We're working with a CEO of a very large company that basically said, I've seen this use case that you built for security. You've saved us a bunch of money. It works really well. We've narrowed our attack surface window from a month to a few seconds. Great. Can we apply this now to everything else that we do? Why are we only focusing? And he asked the CISO, like on the conversation, why are we not adopting this across the board? Like, why are we not doing more with it? And we were like, let's slow down for a second. Let's think about it, and let's think how we really want to use it. And everything Sharon said is absolutely true. Like, you need to make sure you give the agent the right data. You need to make sure that you're building it right. And you also need to make sure that you're not making it too available for everyone, right? Because you can mess things up with agentic pretty easily if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to do it with one team in security, maybe a couple of teams, and do it right, and take your time and put all the guardrails, build it correctly. If you're now opening the door, opening the floodgates, and everybody now can build agents, and you have lost control to some extent, then you can lose that trust that you build.
Yeah.
So we're trying to be very mindful of that.
Okay. And Nick, I mean, what are you seeing? Are the JP Morgans and people, are they ready for this? Are they adopting it? How's it going?
Yeah, great question. So I think a lot of the same challenges that we're talking about here really apply. There are many of the super regional banks, other financial institutions around the world that have been moving very quickly with agents. But oftentimes it looks like you're trying to create a bunch of proof of concepts all at the same time. You don't necessarily have the budgets approved. You don't necessarily know if you have access to the data. You may not even have an understanding of what the potential return on investment is going to be, or how you would define success. And so many times the larger financial institutions have gone out, tried this, and then found out that it failed. There are also, because of the compliance that's necessary in finance, many potential traps and situations that can be really challenging, where you may have concerns around data exfiltration, or you may have concerns around hallucinations, other things like we talked about on the deterministic side. And this process, like Sharon was talking about, when we think about it in finance, it's not just about, do I have the right state management? Do I understand how to control memory? It's also really understanding, when we talk about this being compliant, again, back to that deterministic piece. It has to be perfectly correct.
So 95% doesn't work.
It doesn't actually work.
Okay, yeah.
Estimations don't work. I can't miss a single digit, even if it's on something like somebody's VIN number or their driver's license number. And so we have to make sure that everything that's produced, everything that's extracted, that all of those things are not only exact, but there's something that you can observe, understand why decisions were made, and then be able to go back and ensure that everything was actually correct. And being able to see that across many systems of record is also really critical. Now, that is something that we call finger tracing, that even the human tends to have a really difficult time doing at large scales. And as you're trying to move through all of these steps and make sure that not only is the technology perfectly correct, but that we really understand the process, a lot of these challenges come back up again. You're kicking out too many proofs of concept. You're not going through and understanding what are the components that need to be delivered, and how do we make sure that everything we provide out, as well as everything that we're including in, are correct. And a lot of that really has been driven towards starting to make these inputs and outputs far more structured than they've been before. We're creating schema, we're using pedantic AI and other things to make sure that we're getting as close to strongly typed information in to our agents, as well as strongly typed outputs on the other side. These are things that are going to follow an exact schema, that are going to follow what the business logic is. And when there is a change, we're going to not notify someone. And we're going to make sure that they're able to review that information. And we go through this process to eventually, that staged process, to eventually make it so that things can be straight through processing, but only once the agents are completely trusted. They're not actually human. And so there are mistakes that can happen, just like they can with a human. How do we drive it to make sure that it's far more successful is really about that trust and compliance.
Okay. So Sharon, going back to you a second on this, if you could walk into this mythical enterprise that I've just invented, and what would the ideal implementation process look like based on your experience? Now you're several years into this. How would you paint that out? I mean, for the audience here who are looking to think about, all right, how am I going to go back and think about deploying all these great agents? Microsoft is obviously the way forward on this, but what does it take to do in reality?
Yeah, I'll walk through like a real mythical customer that we have. So we have a sport brand that works with us. They're called Amer Sports. They own like our Turk, Solomon, Wilson, all the major sport brands. So when we first started, we had a contract for I think like $2,000 per month, and we were building like 2 agents for them, like very bespoke agent, like I said, right? So we went in and very similar to what Nick said, really understanding their problem for that specific team, like what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve, what does your current workflow look like, and how do we create these agents that mimics as close as possible the report that one of your junior analysts will produce, right? So once we had success with that, then the interesting thing is we had obviously internal champions who's actually very important for them to be like your champions. So when they send out emails, like one of our guys, he sent email like, my AI drafted this, right? And suddenly people start asking, hey, like how do I use this for my group, right? Mm-hmm. And then we got like supply chain group interested, the IT group interested. They all had their own like personal group use case, very different use case, but they were interested like how do I make the AI work for me, right? So then we kind of expanded into multiple groups, and now we expand into multiple sub-brands because across the brands they're still quite siloed in information sharing. But when you're talking about, say, store inventory for Solomon, it's not that different from store inventory for Wilson, right? Mm-hmm. So now you suddenly have like cross-pollination across these sub-brands. But for us, we don't have to rebuild the AI over and over again. It's like already built, right? You're just applying a different set of data to it. So then we started spreading into different sub-brands, right? And then we work with them, and now we spread into like EMEA and APAC and all of the other regions.
Have you seen that sort of diffusion speed up over the last period?
Yes.
Sort of
actually, thanks to Microsoft, actually. So we released teams for them with these AI agents like embedded in their teams. Okay. And suddenly we see a lot more adoption because obviously everyone at that company and many companies uses teams, right? So I think also just being creative about like where people are already and like try to plug in your agent there and not be so stubborn about they have to be on the like our platform. Yeah. Is actually really helpful to get them interested and coming into the platform. So I think that was like one of the things that we did right.
I think that's a huge thing. I think that a lot of the things I'm hearing from enterprises are, don't give me another user interface. I don't want to go and teach people how to do it and everything. And so plugging into that user interaction layer at the top, so Teams or Copilot, is the actual way to do that.
Yep.
And we're seeing a lot of enterprises actually start going, okay, it's not make or buy. It's now make, with using Azure AI or Copilot Studio or something, or there's buying some great startup solutions that address specific things, or there's also assemble. You start assembling agents together to do a specific task, and some of that could be done in-house, some of that could be done out with suppliers and things as well. So that's working well. I mean, Zhang, what do you think? I mean, an implementation in the security area, what does that look like? What's that perfect scenario in this mythical enterprise? What have they done? What would they do? How would you go in and advise them?
So we like to take a very programmatic approach, right? Like a very pragmatic approach in terms of let's not try and boil the ocean. And this is sort of a challenge for us because we are a platform, so you can do everything with us, which is a blessing and a curse, right? So we like to take the time and really understand what are we solving for. And I think that is, in many cases, what people don't take the time of doing. Let's really get down and dirty into how we identify the entire process. What problem in the process are we really solving for? Is it too much manual work? Is the manual work creating friction? Are we addressing a risk? Or whatever the case may be. If you're not investing your time at the beginning, you're going to pay in dividends after. And that is something that we learned very, very early on. If you want to do it the right way, you need to invest the time, really identify everything that has to do with the process start to finish. So we learned that you can actually get to a pretty serious scale very, very quickly, working with a very small team that are experts in the process that you're solving for. Because that team, for the most part, is in charge of the process or the whatever business procedure that you're solving for, start to finish. So you don't need a huge team to educate or train the agents. You just need to make sure that you have all the right data. And then, and this is key, with agents specifically, you can train them really well, really fast on all data. You can let them consume the data, you can let them be trained on that, you can run different scenarios and simulate a lot of stuff before you let it run loose in production. And we learned that if you do those two things, you can get really great success really, really quickly. And then, just like Sharon said, there is a viral effect happening within the organization where, and when you start seeing that, that's pretty cool because you see, in our case, one security practitioner at a very large airline took a week to build an agent. He did that only doing one small process, one very simple use case, but that use case touched pretty much everyone in the airline, so word got around pretty quickly, and then we started to see that viral effect happening across the entire security team.
So it sounds like process matter experts are critical to what you're doing.
Ask the right question, get very detailed, make sure you think about all the angles, and my personal view is always be paranoid. What can go wrong? What can, what can break, right? And think about that beforehand, try to solve for that, and if you're doing that right, it's going to kind of solve itself.
And map it all out before you get going.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Nick, what about you?
Yeah, so a lot of similarities, which is fun to see, especially because we have such a different approach, right? Yeah, it's very positive for sure. Yeah, but within our system, so taking this imaginary but actually real client process, we worked with a lender that had about $1 billion in assets. And at this stage, their team, their lending team, had about 10 people. And we worked with their process management team to really understand what were the different processes that these individuals worked through as they went through lending packets. Sometimes when you go through the loan onboarding process, you can see 300 pages for a loan document, and sometimes those are all attached in an email and might be scans of images put into a PDF that now you have to extract out. Oftentimes all in a row on that PDF. And now you have to tie it back to the lending origination system, many other steps in that process. And so similar to what Zion said, you have to be very meticulous about what are each of these core steps and how do we actually not only extract the right information, but make sure that we understand what are the variations across promissory notes, for example. Yeah. How are they going to show up? As it varies inside of the PDF, we may see tables, we may see different phrases. In this particular situation, actually, there was a problem where our agents just could not understand a piece of the subject matter expertise where the words floor and ceiling just didn't make sense. And it didn't understand that the floor rate and the ceiling rate were the bottom and the top of what could be charged for that particular loan. Something that makes logical sense to a human, right? Yeah. But very challenging to drive into an agent. And as we were able to work through that process, really understand not only the business logic, but all of the little nuances across the team, that team was eventually able to speed up their lending process to where now they compete with and even drastically surpass many of the super regionals and other lenders out there from a speed and processing perspective. And again, are able to process far more than they ever would have before.
So process is key. I think you've all said that. It's absolutely fundamental. The other aspect is we keep on touching on the human aspect. So maybe Zhang, can you start telling us about some examples of cultural change and positive examples you've seen in your implementations to actually get this across the line with the people? I think we all agree the technology more or less is there to do pretty much everything. Mm-hmm. We need a process to actually sort of map it all out to make that successful. What about the people? Which seems a bit weird when we're talking about agents because they're meant to like take over the world. But
I'm going to say something that maybe surprised a few of the folks here. We almost don't have any problems with our customers or our audience in convincing them that they need to adopt it, right? Like they want to adopt it. They, in many cases, are approaching us because they want to, dip their hands in the water, right? Like they want to test it out. They just want to do it simple, secured, and in a very controlled way, and we enable that for them, right? So the shift that I see with agentic is people are striving to test it out, at least in our industry, and they want to do that because there is, if you think about it, a lot of manual, mundane work that has to happen from a security operations perspective. You need to go through dozens of alerts or thousands of alerts every day. You need to do a lot of hard work connecting a few things together, or investigating something would require you to go through long lines, thousands of lines of code, or logs or whatever it is, and then try to make sense of it. Those are things that agents can actually do really well. So the shift that we're seeing is people constantly think, how can I harness this new technology to my advantage so I'm not wasting time on boring stuff, and now I have more time to think about the things that I know, because as a human being, as an employee who worked in the organization for a while, I can now make connections between what is really important for the business, how the organization works. In many cases, who do I need to speak with in order to understand something, right? So I want to focus on that, on the more important things, the more, let's call it complex things that would be very difficult to train an agent to do. So I'm going to let the agents do what they do really, really well, way better than what a human can do. And I'm going to focus on all the other things, which tend to be more interesting. So that's definitely a shift that we see every single day with 100% of our customers.
Yeah. Nick?
Yeah, so I like that you bring up people. For me, most root cause analysis, I'm going to go through a process where I'm going to look at the people first, then I'm going to look at the product, and I'm going to see if there are potential challenges or opportunities inside of it. Then I'm going to look at process, and finally I'm going to look at profit. And normally, by the time I've made it through the first three, profit kind of takes care of itself. And so many times when we're coming in and we're working with the teams, that key piece is about people. And unfortunately, sometimes adoption is actually really difficult. It is a little surprising for me to hear that it's not for you.
No, I didn't say it's not difficult. I said that people are striving to get it, striving to try it out. We almost don't have any objections.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. And I think we see a lot of the same thing, especially as individuals are able to see that this is not here to replace their jobs. This agent is here to supplement what they do and to take a lot of that toil, a lot of that core work that was really pretty mundane in the past off of their plates and allow them to focus on things that are more strategic. And that may be something that you're hearing all over the place, but it's actually true, which is nice, right? Yeah. As we move into the product, again, really understanding, defining that outcome, making sure that the teams understand that in order to make this successful, we need to see what are the dollars associated with it. If you can then show what that return on investment is going to be, then it is far easier to be able to get access to data, to be able to get access to the right systems to make sure that everything's actually going to work correctly, and to get the other teams buy-in that are responsible for parts of this system or process that you don't normally know about, that you don't normally think about in your day-to-day workflow. And so as you move down into that key process piece, you now need to understand everything from timelines to scope to what are the resources that are available, whether those are individuals, whether it's the new systems, and how do you make sure that those are aligned back with the actual expectations. As you move through that process, delivering is much easier, adoption is much easier as well.
Yeah.
I think for us, we are also trying to shift into a broad partnership level, go-to-market motion. And so this means that for us, working with Microsoft on the marketplace, starting to have a partnership through Broadridge, through DTCC, through others that will go out and resell our products and services, these core agents and that agentic platform, as well as a service fabric that helps connect all of these integrations and all of these connections back together, now starts creating the opportunity for adoption at scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's key to your original 3-layer cake.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's great. You're looking at a whole process change. Sharon, I mean, it's all in the name, personal AI. I mean, how are you seeing it? I mean, obviously you're getting close with the users, and how are they adopting, and how are you going about the democratization?
Yeah, I think democratization is definitely our goal. We used to be a B2C company, so I think two things that we sometimes have to educate enterprise users that they want to use agent for, right? The first thing is actually things that you don't want to do, which I think we spoke about here. That's taking a significant amount of time. So if you're familiar with the Eisenhower matrix, right? The things that you just want to X out or delegate should be the things that you want your agent to take care of. And the second part of it is things that you're really bad at. Like, for example, I'm very bad at design, like really bad, right? But now there's a lot of no-code like design agents that I can use to get somewhere closer to the vision that I have in my head, right? So I think those are the two things that when users are coming to us with a very complex use case, we try to ask them like, hey, is this something that you would want a second person to do, right? And if the answer is yes, right, that is probably a good use case for them. And once we make that successful, they're also very happy about it because it's either taking things off their plate that they hate to do or is making them better, right? And I think that's like fundamentally how we think about like democratization of these things. And this is different for everyone, right? Like my design partner, she's very good at design, but she doesn't know how to code. But having the coding agent helps her get a little bit closer to development, right? So she can see her prototype moving without having to spend hours doing Figma, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are the things that like we really see traction and joy or magic moment on people's faces when that works.
Excellent. So as we tie up here, from all three of you, I'd love one trend that the audience should be thinking about, because what's going to happen in the next 3 years? What's the one thing they should be thinking about? Sharon, why don't you kick us off?
I think this is already happening. I think not only thinking of A to A as agent to agent, as a multi-engine platform or orchestration, but really thinking about one of these A can also be a human. So it's more like A to H to A. And how do we have human involved organically in that process as a collaboration partner and treating the AI kind of like a human partner, right? So that I think will be something that make agentic things work better, because now we're not worried about drifting.
So heterogeneous teams, agents and humans.
Yep.
Perfect. Zhang.
Yeah, I think along the same lines, agentic is becoming a standard. If you're not investing today in making your workforce more accustomed to agents and build that trust and build that, let's call it making it a second nature, you're going to find yourself in a few short years behind the curve. I think that's just the reality of it. Again, our audience is very technical, so we see that every day. They pull more than we push, but I really think 2 years from now, it's just going to be a standard.
Perfect. Nick?
Yeah. I want to go back to an old phrase that there's an app for that. I think it won't just be that we'll have an agent for that, for everything that you do, but that there will be marketplaces, there will be structures, context engineering. Any problem that we tend to find nowadays is solved about as fast as I can try to figure out how we're going to solve it. And you can go out and start adopting those. And if you can today start finding a way to get access to a marketplace, get access to something that you can get closer to just clicking and downloading, then you will be an entire paradigm shift ahead of your competition.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening.